Chad, I'm having a webinar with Dan today. It's the start of earnings season, and Dan Passarelli is doing a webinar for the Market Chameleon community. So I'll put that in the chat today. That
Right.
is at 2 p.m. So everyone, one last look at the disclaimer. Rob, have you come back with anything about which? I know we're on a little bit of a delay. Rob hasn't come back with anything on where he's looking at the big money order flow.
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure where he's looking. Maybe the order sentiment report. Um, so this is the option order sentiment report, and I don't think he's looking at that because I don't see, you know, anything here that he would be looking at.
That looks like the flow has been bearish recently, right?
Yeah, or like
Or at least,
neutral. So this is just basically aggregating the the order flow by its delta volume, and it's interpreting the delta volume based on, the side of the order that we're seeing uh, in the options markets. But I don't think he's referring to this.
all right. So Rob did come back. Again, there's a delay between YouTube and our what we're doing live. So he says when you call up the summary, one of the tabs is sentiment.
Yeah, let me see if it's in. I'm just trying to find the breakdown of this. So let me just close this for a second, and we'll look at this report in the Boeing. So this particular report is looking at the stock trades, okay, just the equity trades, um, not the options. And what it's doing is looking at the granular trade, like the minute, the minute to minute volume. Okay, the minute to minute trading activity to see if there's anything within that minute period that stands out. Okay, that's unusual. So we could look at volume, like trading volume from many different perspectives. We could look at it from the the total volume on the day, right? For example, or we could look at it the total volume for the week, um, compare it week to week or month to month, day to day. And we could also look at it in much shorter time periods, right? So as you get much shorter, it could tell you, a different story or answer different questions. So this report, in particular, looks at very short time periods intraday. Okay, so this is now looking at the volume and the trade date and the trade data on a more, granular specific level. And within the minute, so this is the VWAP table below, and you could see for each minute, 4 o'clock, 3:59, 3:58, 3:57. For each minute, we we look at the trades and trade volume, and then within that minute, we categorize it and analyze it and tag if there's anything unusual within that minute. Okay, that's what we're doing here. Um, you could have the volume. So for example, within the minute, right, we know the volume because we could add up all the trades and um, all the stocks that traded, which would add up to the volume. We could look at the notional value of the volume. So we could take the trades times the price of each trade, and then take the volume weighted average price. Instead of a straight average of each trade, we multiply by the volume of the trade. and get the total notional. Then we have the VWAP price. That's the volume weighted average price within that minute. So within a minute, you could have many different trades. You could have trades that are 100 shares. You could have 1,000 shares. You could have 100,000 shares that traded at a certain price. So this looks at the volume weighted average price, which says within that minute, essentially where was the volume traded. So to do that, we multiply each trade by the volume and its price, and then take the average of that. So now we have these statistics. We also can look at the price impact, the change of the VWAP, the volume average price, from 1 minute to the next. Okay, so this is the change. So we start getting these stats. Besides that, you have these different tabs where you could look at within that minute, what percentage of it was sweep orders, what percentage of it were block trades, dark pool, institutional, and so forth. But let's just stick to the summary here. And, what kind of questions can we answer just from looking at this data, right? Well, one is if we track the volume for each minute, we could see if there was a burst in activity for any particular minute. It should stand out, like it should stand out from the others. So you could see here, 20 million versus 3 million versus 5 million on average. But also it should stand out for that particular time of day. So the volume profile of a stock usually varies, or you'll see a difference between, like, say, the volume early in the morning and the volume like in the noon time or afternoon. So we should also compare it to its typical volume for that time of day. Okay. So once we have these benchmarks, right, then we could spot these volume bursts. Like, well, all of a sudden there's an unusual amount of volume that traded in that particular time. And this kind of then allows us to look at it and analyze it more in depth, of trying to figure out, well, what might have happened, what caused it, what can we find the reason behind it, what do we think may have happened. So this could go into our overall analysis. And we could also analyze it from more perspectives. Maybe it's not just that 1 minute, but maybe all of a sudden we see this recurring throughout the day, which is unusual too. It might have not, maybe if only one happened, we could analyze that one. But what if we see an unusual amount even for the day? All right, so how many do you typically have in a day? So when we see an unusual volume burst, right, that happened during a particular minute, we tag that, right? We say, well, here's in this particular minute, something happened. So we call that a burst. But besides a volume burst, right, now we know that there's an unusual amount of volume. Well, then we kind of want to know, what was the price impact on the stock during that burst, right? What was the change in the stock price, that's associated with that big volume burst? Just like if you saw, in Boeing, an unusual amount of, like, let's say we're tracking from day to day. If you saw an unusual amount of volume traded in a particular day and the stock's up 3%, well, that's an indication that there's a lot of potential demand for that stock that day, right? Because there's a lot of volume, and on the day the stock was up, right? So that's indicating that there had to be people pushing that stock to a higher level, willing to pay higher prices than the day before, on high volume. So same thing we could do in the minute. If we look at the minute and we say, okay, there's a big volume burst. And what happened to the stock if we compared the VWAP price, the volume weighted average price, to the previous minute's volume average price? And if it's up, right? If it's up, it's on an uptick. How do we categorize that? Could say, volume burst with an uptick, volume burst with a downtick, or we'll just say here, we'll just call it a buy burst to make it easy, right? So to make it easy, we'll say, okay, there's a volume burst that looked like, that there was buy pressure. Okay. So that's what the buy burst is. Sell burst would be on the other way if there's a big burst. And here we have, for the day, we had one sell burst. So let's look at that one. If you click on it, it tells you the time. So I'm going to click on it. So here we go to the sell burst. And we see at 12:16. So this is in the middle of the day, right? We're talking about a time period where probably usually the volume is lower than the first hour of trading, last hour of trading. So for this particular time of day, we saw a large volume burst for $9.7 million worth of stock trade in that minute. And during that minute, you could see that the volume weighted average price was $149.88. But the previous minute was $149.92. So it was on a downtick, right? You could see that from the previous minute to the next minute, it was on a downtick 24 cents. So we call that a sell burst, okay? Because the volume looks like it was coming from pressure from sell side, okay? So when we look at these bursts, maybe it could get explained away. There could be like reasons that we're like, okay, this makes sense. There's nothing unusual about it. And it's explained away. So then we start looking for those other reasons what may have caused the burst. And
favorites are here.
James, I mean, sorry, Will, I think your TV.
Yeah, my phone is ringing. Sorry about that.
Yeah. And so let me just try to, we would have a star next to it. So nothing here, but that I detected. But if there was something else that happened that we detected around that minute, we would put it next to these columns. And so did something else happen, for example, in the market? Or was there a certain event that happened that we detected specific to the stock or to the market that could potentially explain this burst away? And an event could be, like some that the Fed announced interest rate hikes or interest rate decision or employment or something, like an event that may have triggered a bigger burst because people are getting that news and then reacting to that news. And it would make sense. Or it could be just a program trade or an overall burst in the market, which could impact this stock as well. Let's say, there's a big sell burst in the S&P 500 companies or the NASDAQ. And, if a program trade is triggered, it could impact other stocks as well. So there are certain things, that if we detect, we would put into this column here to try to explain it away. So you always want to try to see if you could explain it away with what is the reasoning behind this. And if you can't, then you would have to, keep keep track of it, like, well, is there maybe a different reason, or is there now a trend or something else going on that I can't explain away? So just looking at these bursts alone, right, for the day, what we see is that in Boeing, we had a total of 5 bursts throughout the day, 5 buy bursts, 1 sell burst. Okay, if we looked at, if we opened it up, here are the 5 volume bursts that we detected. These are the times that we detected them. This is the total dollar value of each burst. And then you get some like statistics on percentage sweep, block, and so forth. But if you click on it, you'll get more details. So just having this opened up, we could see 2 of them happened, in the early mornings, between 10 and 11. One happened at 11:34. Then we had 2 right at the end of the day. And they ranged, from $12 million up to 62 million, like right up at the end of the day. So there's a total of 5 of them. The question is that an unusual amount? Is that a crazy amount? Well, let's compare that to daily averages. So if we looked at the last 30 days, we have this table over here. So in the last 30 days, on average, we've seen about 9 bursts for an average notional of 113 million. So looking at that, it's not unusual, you got 5 bursts. This was on Friday, but if we compare it to other days in the last 30 days, we've seen 9, much higher. So that's not that unusual. Also, we track the price impact, right? So the impact to the stock. So these price bursts, when we're looking at from minute to minute, usually percentage-wise, it's going to be very small, right? Because the ticks, you're not going to get like, 1-2%. It takes a while. It's going to take more than that to move the stock. So we track it based on just the dollar value of the burst. So you could see here on Friday, the average impact was up 17 cents. If we looked at it relative to the last 30 days, up 21 cents. So it was the impact itself to the buy burst didn't seem like there was unusual illiquidity, right? Because what I'm talking about illiquidity is like if there was a buy burst and all of a sudden, we went to the average impact of $1 versus 21 cents. Well, that would be unusual because, what's up with that? Why is the order book thinner all of a sudden than it used to be, right? Because if you get this unusual buy burst and all of a sudden the stock moves, 3-4 times greater amount than average, then that could either, either the volume of the buy bursts are way bigger, pushing the stock much higher, or the order book itself, the thickness or liquidity of the order book has gotten thinner. Okay, it's widening out, right? When we look at, so when you think about the liquidity is like, you got liquidity on the buy side, the demand for the stock, you got the liquidity on the sell side, the supply of the stock, and then you have the spread, right? So it goes beyond the MBBO. You're talking about like the liquidity of the order book. Has it gotten thinner? So here it doesn't look like that, right? You got on average 17 cents versus 21 cents. So that doesn't look, that is more than usual. And on the sell side, you only had 1 for 9.7 million versus on average you had 11 versus 156 million in the last 30 days. With an average downtick of 21 cents versus 24 cents. So this doesn't look unusual. So on the day, if we just look on the days burst, there's more buy than sell, right? Five buys versus one sell, $127 million worth of stock on the buy side versus 9.7 million on the sell side. So on the day, those buy bursts look like they were more bullish than bearish, right? More bullish than bearish for an average VWAP price of $150.56 versus sell $149.64. So on the day, yes, it looks like it was skewed towards the more bullish side. But if we compared it, if we made more comparison and deeper analysis to more benchmarks, it doesn't look that unusual or overwhelming. So that would be the kind of the insights from these stats. So we're right up at 9:30.
Yeah, that was great, D. Rob says thank you. There was quite a bit of chat about this and about earnings, start of earnings season. Since he was talking about a straddle he has on in Bank of America, maybe we can look at the earnings calendar tomorrow with the start of the earnings season with the banks coming up this week. Great job as always, Dima. Thanks everyone for joining. Remember, there's a link for a webinar with Dan Passarelli, who's going to be talking about earnings today at 2 p.m. So everyone click on that if you want to check that out. Awesome job, D.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Stay safe out there. Have a great trading day, and hope to see you guys tomorrow.